That came up probably a creepy talks. If you don't know who we are already, maybe it's your first time tuning in. The Asia Brewers Network is basically a resource portal dedicated to delivering brewing news from around the region. So what we do is we bring insights, analysis of industry trends in the beer industry, and educational opportunities for brewers as well. And one of the things that we also do, you may have heard of us before, is we're actually the team behind the Seabrew annual beer industry conference. So as you can imagine, we haven't been able to celebrate and enjoy the conference together. The last one we had was in Bangkok in 2019, where Tyler, Andrew, and I drank copious amounts of craft beer, and it was a very, very enjoyable conference. Some of the other activities we do as ABN include the Brew Asia technical sessions and the Asia Beer Championship. So if you haven't heard of the Asia Beer Championship and you're a brewer in Asia, I'd really strongly encourage you to look us up on our website or go into Google and just type in Asia Beer Championship. So today we're kind of continuing the series of talks we've been doing with brewers and brewing pioneers from around the region. And I'm really, really excited to have two friends on the show today. And we'll try and keep it, we'll try and avoid too much in jokes and conversation. But essentially today and during these ABN talks, we talk to brewers about the practical challenges they face, the stories about them building their businesses, and kind of everything in between. So if you're listening in, hopefully there's something that you can learn from Tyler and Andy about building bootstrapping a brewery, about the Cambodian beer market as well. We'll be diving into that. And look, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tyler and Andrew, the co-founders of Riel Brewing and Distilling, onto the show. Great to have you guys on.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, let's get started. So maybe you could tell us a bit about the basics of what you guys are doing. What is Riel Brewing and Distilling? Where are you guys based? Give us the 101 on your brewery.
Well, I guess what we do is we're trying to bring the best craft beer to Cambodia without cutting any corners in terms of quality. We're trying to get the local market into it, which is slowly happening over the last 5 years. Basically we're just trying to provide the best quality beer and a nice selection of rotators so people can try new stuff, because a lot of people here, especially the locals, haven't tried many craft beers. They've tried the ones that are from here and then the imports from Vietnam, and they've never tried anything else. So trying to give them a well-balanced selection of styles.
Yeah, we definitely like to have a wide variety, so like sours, IPAs, traditional sort of browns and pales and stuff. All sorts of stuff to play with.
And I mean, on that, that's really interesting. You mentioned before about the local crowd getting into craft beer. I mean, what's the experience like? I mean, 2021. I mean, trying to forget COVID temporarily. I know that's a difficult thing to do. But I mean, have you managed to start winning over more Khmers, more Cambodians to craft?
For sure. There's been so we've seen it in the last, say, despite COVID, in the last year and a half, 2 years, there's definitely been an uptake in the local market, starting with younger people around, say, 20, 25. But just recently, we've noticed an uptrend in the older market, maybe like 30 to 40, starting to get into the market, starting to enjoy the flavors. So yeah, it's definitely going upwards. Aside from COVID.
Yeah, that's obviously something that, I mean, on some of the previous ABN talks, I think we've spent quite a lot of time talking about COVID, and maybe we can, for everyone's sanity right now, we can try and cover that maybe toward the end, so we don't stress too much about it, or we can try and do it's I know it's the elephant in the room. We can talk about it, but look, I want to hear, and I think I'd love for the audience to learn more about you guys, because you guys are not the typical, you're not coming into the brewing business with $1 million. You guys have bootstrapped your brewery. I mean, tell us about the brewing journey. I understand it started, Andy, your brewing journey started with a gift or a brewing kit that was passed on by a
Yeah.
deceased friend or deceased relative?
A relative of a deceased friend. Sorry, a deceased relative of a friend who's still living. The friend's still alive. But yeah, his grandpa passed away and left a bunch of very basic homebrew equipment, and pretty much started from there. Started using that, making shitty beer, exploding bottles left, right, and center, that sort of thing.
And was this in Australia? Because you're originally in
This is
Australia,
in
right?
Australia, in
Yeah.
Adelaide.
You know?
How long ago, or how long ago?
Yeah, I don't know how old were you?
That was about 15, legally 18. We were about 15. 15 or 16.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many Australian federal police are listening, so not to worry, not to worry. So, okay, so you got started at a young age in Australia, and then how did you guys come up? When did the idea of setting up a brewery in Cambodia start? I mean, yeah, how did you guys end up in Cambodia?
My brother had been here since '04, and come 2010, he dragged me out here, and I planned to be here for 2 years and then leave, go back home. And I met an Australian guy. He's one of my housemates, and Andy happened to be one of his friends. The guy I'm talking about is the one who got the homebrew kit in the will. And so he was my roommate here in Cambodia. Andy came out to visit, and he was supposed to be here 5 days, ended up staying 5 months. And in that time, we were like, well, shit, we don't want to go back to our own countries. What can we figure out to do here? Let's open a business. And he said, well, I can make beer, and I haven't seen the kind of beer I can make out here. So like, shit, let's do it.
And so that was you guys started off, I guess,
early 2013.
so it was more about you guys wanted better beer essentially for yourselves. You wanted to kind of start. Fair enough.
Think for yourself first.
No, fair enough. And I mean, at that time, before we talk about the rest of the journey, what was beer like in Cambodia back then? Like what were your options back in those days?
Macro lager.
Yeah, piss lager or stout.
Kingdom Pilsner, Kingdom Dark Lager was your fancy option.
Yeah, this time Kingdom was, I mean, they'd been around for a little bit, but they weren't really doing craft stuff. And then,
I mean, their Dark Lager was good back then.
yeah, there was a just drink a decent amount.
But I guess it wasn't good enough to sate your guys' desire for kind of Aussie quality, American quality.
Himawari Hotel was open before us, but at $7 a beer, it was a bit out of our price range at the
Wait,
at
$7 US a beer in
Plus
14?
plus 10% VAT.
And so I guess was that also a thing as well, that brewing was also,
We only
it
went
did
when
seem.
What?
What was that? Sorry, I lost you for a second.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so essentially there was pretty limited craft beer. It was expensive. You guys spotted a gap, both for yourselves and for the market. What happened next?
We went back. He went to Canada, and I went to the U.S., and we started saving up money. So I left for about 15 months, and he left for upwards of 2 years.
And so basically, you guys just had this mission, this goal. You said, I'm going to work your ass off, bootstrap it from the ground up.
And because we didn't have much time in Cambodia, once we had decided to do this, to find out where we could source things locally, that was kind of a mistake. We were like, yeah, let's do this. And then we planned it while we were abroad, and then not realizing we could have done it way cheaper if we would have did a bit of research before we left. But we ended up buying our stuff from stout tanks and kettles in Oregon and shipping it out there. We bought, everything on a budget. Andy's an engineer, so he DIY'd all the control systems, the chilling systems, using air cons and local microcontrollers, like just whatever.
We still use the same compressor from The day one in Cambodia we bought the compressor. It's still in use today. It's about 35 years old
It
now.
was a 25-year-old compressor when we bought it. It didn't turn on, so we bashed it with a block of wood, and it clicked on, and it's been running ever since.
Yeah, should click on in about 25 minutes.
And so, I mean, it's so cool, because that's one thing I've always admired about you guys, is how DIY, you know, you guys to me are kind of like the software, you take a very software style development model, DIY ethos, right? You guys don't spend millions of bucks, you build your own systems and you do it kind of from the ground up. You know, when you got started, what was that? Was it, you know, when you started brewing and started getting all those systems set up, what was the first kind of 6 months like? Like, was it pretty nerve-wracking after you'd saved all this money, you came back, you started building? What was
it? Driving around in the hot sun to find a washer this big with an inner diameter that big. And then when you drove around for 2 days and you can't find it, you go to the local metal fabricator and have him cut one out of stainless sheet metal.
Yeah, most of it was hardware challenges. Before brewing, I was well, during brewing, I guess. Before I had a career in brewing, I was a software engineer. So that side of things wasn't too hard. I mean, I've been doing it for a while. But yeah, finding the hardware out here and getting hardware that can be replaced when it inevitably breaks that was a big challenge for sure. And this was back before you could get stuff from Amazon or AliExpress. We couldn't get that in Cambodia at the time, so that didn't make things easy.
Pretty much ordering from Vietnam was the only option we had on a budget.
Yeah.
And so basically, so you guys built, I mean, you literally built your own brewing setup. I mean, once, I mean, it's so cool that you guys built it yourselves, right? Or you built it up from the ground. There's so much DIY stuff involved. I mean, once you'd built the system, once you'd spent all that time driving around in the hot sun and getting all these parts and fabricated, what was it then like? Like, what was the experience launching your first beers? I think your first beer, was it a grapefruit beer? What was that like?
Not great. Seeing people just saying, "No way, we're not paying $3 for a beer. Fuck that, you're crazy." And that lasted a while.
You know, you would get people coming, we'd go to, in the beginning, to get our name out there, we would go to farmers markets. We were selling 330 ml for $3. We were the only beer available inside this venue. And you got the people who were like, "Oh shit, craft beer. Yeah, I'll fucking buy one." But then you get most of the people come up and be like, "Ha, the beers outside are 50 cents. Like, you're gonna try to literally," and we give them a free sample. And they're like, "Oh my God, okay, I'll pay $3 for that." But at the time, you know, our equipment wasn't refined. We weren't in tune with the equipment yet. So, I mean, I think at that time we didn't even have cold storage. So we ended up coming a long way from there, and our quality has improved quite a bit.
It's definitely the biggest challenge of the market was the fact that there wasn't really a market before. So it took a while for that to build up and for people to really start, I guess, appreciating the product.
I think it was about 3 years before people started. About 3 years from, so let's say we started 2015. It wasn't until 2018 where people were willing to pay the price for that quality.
Yeah, the market started building about there, and then it was really starting to take off in the start of 2020, and then everything happened.
We had to get teaching jobs and work full-time teaching, and then run the brewery, just me and him, for the first 3 years.
Fun.
I mean, it's such, look, I think, again, the reason I love this part of your story, though, is you guys persevered, right? I mean, what kept you going for that period? I mean, were you just convinced that?
we saw it slowly going up. We saw the hype. You know, also one of the problems with us was we didn't have a tap room for a long time, so we were selling wholesale, and that really, you know, was harder to get things going. But then when multiple craft beer bars started coming out with a place to drink our product and more of them, then that also they were getting the young Khmer crowd, like the 20, 25-year-olds. They were getting the, you know, the folks who not necessarily want to drink in a hot, sweaty brewery. They want to drink in a nice aircon place. Those places popped up, and that helped push the market into where we are now.
Shout out to Embargo and Box Office. Check out the booth.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I first, when I first started, visiting Cambodia, I guess from 2016 onwards, it was quite exciting to watch, like places like Embargo being built, Box Office getting more popular, you guys with your tap room, and it did seem like a really exciting time seeing Cambodia's craft beer scene kind of expand. I mean, since then, one of the things that you guys have recently built is your own new tap room. Was it the Noisy Chili?
Can you go back? You skipped a bit there. Can you just repeat that something?
Yeah, sure. So I was just saying, obviously since those DIY days of building things up, you've now gone and built, you've built your own tap room. You're now at a point where you've got, an awesome kind of brew pub style setup. The Noisy Chili, is it the Noisy Chili tap house?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in between, what would you say, since between, when you first launched in the market to getting to the point when you've got your own, significant brewing setup, how did you guys grow? I mean, you mentioned before you started getting some of the younger Khmers drinking your beer. Obviously, I'm sure some of the expats from the US, from Australia, New Zealand were keen to try craft beer. I mean, what was the strategy you guys used? How did you kind of win over more people?
You called it before, perseverance.
Yep.
That's it. Keep going.
Yep. We just kept it going, and slowly but surely, as the market matured, we were able to grow. Like that's what he was saying. Thanks to Box Office and Embargo for helping spread the seed.
Help build the market.
Yeah, without those guys, I mean, there would be a whole bunch less craft beer drinkers.
So it was kind of like a community effort. Was it kind of one of those things where you guys were making better and better beer, you were getting better and better venues popping up, and it just kind of formed some kind of critical mass that it became? I mean, is craft beer cool now in Phnom Penh?
Yeah. It's still got a long way to go.
Like it's nowhere near the size of Saigon or something, but hopefully it'll get there in a couple of years.
But also, one thing we've noticed is over the last 5 or 6 years or whatever, since we've started, there's an emerging middle class of locals who can now afford these kind of drinks. Before, when we first started, the locals couldn't even imagine paying $3 for one beer unless they went to a fancy nightclub and were impressing their friends once a year or something. So, now we're starting to see even in one Saturday night, 3 to 4 tables over one night with locals coming in because they can now start to afford it.
And I mean, for that emerging middle class, I mean, how do they find out about you guys? Is it a matter of, is it word of mouth?
That, and also, like I said, the craft beer bars.
Yeah.
The craft beer bars are where it started, and then they now come to our place.
Right.
We do. There's been a bit of an uptake also in private events and stuff where we provide beer, things like that. A lot of word of mouth through private events of the bit more affluent people here tend to spread the word. So I think that helps as well.
And I mean, what's it been like? Obviously, you guys launched the new tap room, the new tap house during COVID. Now, I promise we wouldn't talk too much about COVID, but what's the experience like since, what's it been like for the past? Because you guys kind of hit your stride, and then what's it been like since
Cambodia, we had low numbers until February. When February hit, which is when we opened our bar, early February, our new bar, our bigger place, February 20th is when the outbreak started. Then we got shut down for roughly between 8 and 10 weeks. And then we opened for how many? 6?
In total, we've been here a bit over a year at the new place in total, and we've been open for about 9 or 10 weeks in total. Maybe 12.
Yeah.
Not a great percentage of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously been tough. I totally empathize. It's been a tough year, but I mean, as things, I guess even now, I guess people are still drinking, right? I know there are restrictions.
Nobody,
But, cheers,
nobody
cheers to
really
that, by the way.
even with the restrictions, there's still.
And so, I mean, I guess what have you guys? I mean, what have you guys done? I guess in the past kind of 12 months. I mean, have you had to change as you've become more popular? As you grow, have you had to change your style portfolio? I mean, you touched on before, right? You want to obviously you guys make uncompromising good beer, and I'm a big fan of your beer. There's no bullshit as well. It's good quality, straightforward, bold flavors. But have you, as you've become more popular, have you had to kind of change your style a bit? Because that's something that we hear a lot from brewers, and as you kind of break into that middle class, you touched on before, middle class drinkers who aren't. Yeah, how has your portfolio evolved?
You do have to, obviously, you have to somewhat cater to the market, but the way we've been doing that is to just really diversify things and see what hits and what doesn't. So we found in the market here, maybe as of, well, COVID's put my memory a bit spazzy, but let's say around 6 to 8 months ago, there was a bit of a divergence. Like the market tended to go for either really weird, like gosses and sours and fruits, or really strong traditional stuff like big double IPAs and that sort of thing. There was definite, like we made the Imperial Red Ipa at 8.3, and that was gone quicker than we can make it repeatedly. And it's a strong beer. It's not a weak flavored beer.
Which is interesting because when we started, our flagship IPA was 7.8. And we got so many complaints that the ABV was too high and people only drink 2 and then leave and they won't continue drinking. So please bring the ABV down. So we brought it to 7.1. Now the market wants 8.3.
Yeah. It's weird. They want 8.3 or 3.8.
Yeah.
Nothing in between.
We've been experimenting with low, like sub 5% ABV beers, and it is. I mean, I was kind of against going lower than 4.5, and he's like, "Fuck it, let's try it." And then you wouldn't believe how many people sit there and drink all day long in 3.8% beers, and those are the really nice drunks. You get people drinking 4 or 5 pints of IPA, and then they're, I didn't drink that many. The low ABV drunks are better than the high ABV drunks.
Kind of smoothing their way up. I mean, on the lower ABV beers, because on the higher ABV stuff, and that's interesting. I guess that's people wanting that punch and something powerful and sitting there with it. But back to the lower ABV beers, because as you guys know and some of the listeners know, I'm a passionate advocate. I think there needs to be a wider range of lower ABV options, sub 4.5%. I'm not saying 1%, okay, but I'm saying I think 3%, 4% beers are good. I mean, what are the styles you guys are currently making sub 4.5 or sub 5%? Like, what are you guys doing?
We got a Blender Weiss at 3.8. We got the Gosser at 4.3. We have a Session Pale at 4.5. The Brown at 4.5. The
about half of our beers are now sub.
Yeah.
That's really impressive. I mean, that's actually. That's really unusual. I don't know if you guys realize how unusual that is regionally.
I didn't think it was going to work.
Like the lower ones or the really big ones are getting bigger, but sort of the down the middle of the road is not as popular.
We get a lot of people coming in, especially the young local crowd, young as in 20 to 25. They come in and say, what is the lowest, the weakest beer? Can we get the weakest beer? You'll get 3 guys and 3 girls come in, and the guys all want to, they know IPA. They know this one, IPA. But then the girls are like, can we get the really weak one? And then that's one of our, the fruit Berliner Weiss. We 3.8%, and we rotate the fruit each time. So one batch might be blueberry, the next one strawberry, usually we do a berry. And then we just rotate that each time. Same Berliner Weiss, just different fruit. And that's always a hit with the Khmer people. They like the sours.
Actually, that's on that note. The local crowd either really loves a big bit of beer, maybe to show, well, I love big, strong beers, or they can't take a bit of beer. They don't want any bitterness. So maybe that's part of the divergence there.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've seen, we definitely saw similar stuff in Saigon, and Ho Chi Minh City, where, for instance, beer craft was smashing through a lot of fruit beers and doing a lot of, slightly lower ABV, like 4% beers that I know are really popular with the Vietnamese crowd. And I know you guys have tried some of those beers as well, and you guys have been on in beer craft actually.
Yeah,
that's really interesting about. Yeah, I know, and I mean, I think it's really interesting though, hearing how the style, the appetite is changing. I mean, where do you guys think it's going to go? Do you think you're going to double down on this kind of divergent strategy where you're going to make bigger, bolder beers and kind of eat more sessionable beers and kind of start leaving a bit of a gap in between? Where are you guys going in terms of your portfolio?
I wouldn't say doubling down. I mean, we're going to continue that route, obviously, but we're not going to forget about the midpoint with our normal pales and stuff. I mean, that's it always has been our bread and butter, so we continue to do those.
You can have 4 pale ales on tap, and they'll sell equally as good. I mean, you can overdo the pale ales, and they will never ever slow down.
It's funny though, right? Because that's such a. Oh no, sorry. I was going to say it's such a typical. Sorry to say, it's such a typical Westerner mindset, right? Like Western craft beer mindset. Let's kind of force feed people with pale ales, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, it kind of is, right? Like,
a good percentage of beers anyway, I guess.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here drinking a pale ale, but yeah.
Well, we got people coming in and they're not really familiar with craft beer, and they're like, "Oh, just give me one with the least amount of flavor," or "Can I get a pilsner?" "Oh, sorry, I don't have a pilsner." And so we'll give them our session pale, and that is like a very light flavored pale ale with 4.5%. So that is a nice stepping stone into the craft beer market as well. A very light pale ale with a lower ABV, and then we're like, this is the closest we have to a pilsner. And then they might even move up to the Citra pale, which is slightly more bitter, and then like that more than the session pale. So, just giving people samples who are really unsure, they tend to be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Oh, I would never thought of that. And they get a sour and another sour and another sour. So that's kind of cool.
So how many beers have you guys got on now? Like how many on draft or by bottle, right, roughly?
Well, right now we're closed.
right. But if it was open,
I think, what do we got? About 8 at the moment.
Brown, ginger, session pale, Citra, IPA.
Oh, we just did a lambic.
Yeah, we just harvested.
Wow.
We've been trying to harvest wild yeast here for like 3 years, and finally got the one we wanted.
Can you share more about that? Because that's quite an achievement. Not a lot of Southeast Asian brewers have done lambics.
So we've noticed over the years we've done it that there seems to be a few different competing yeasts that you get. There's one that has a really nice pineapple-y aroma esters, but it's often associated with one that smells like
gym socks.
Yeah, old rotten dirty socks, which we boiled once and it stunk out the entire brewery for days.
Into the street.
But we finally managed to actually isolate the pineapple ester one. So that's
exciting because we knew it was here. We just couldn't get it alone.
And so what kind of scale are you doing that on? Like, are you doing it in kind of smaller batches?
That was a 300-liter batch. But,
oh wow! Okay.
We don't expect it to sell anywhere nearly as quick, obviously, as any other beers. But so far, I mean, it's been pretty positive reactions. It's really quite pineapple-y, kind of a bit jackfruity. Yeah, it's not too bad.
I mean, speaking of the reactions and the fact that you guys have always had kind of one foot in the hospitality side, introducing beers to people. One thing I always stuck out about me at your old tap room was how, and Tyler, you mentioned it before, how open you guys were to giving out little samples to people. And I guess that's part of brewing in a market where, there's a lot of people who need to be proven, the value needs to be proven, and they need to taste the quality because they think it might be a rip-off when they first see it, particularly early on. But, I mean, how have you guys balanced that, being brewers and running your own tap room? Because that's a tension, that is always a tough tension to manage, because they are hospitality and brewing are two different things. I mean, how have you guys managed that in the past couple of years? Like, what have you guys learned?
It's hard. You got many different kinds of customers.
You grow a thick skin.
Yeah, and when people, we get a lot of people coming in and drinking high ABV beers, and then they, they bitch and complain about their bill and say, I couldn't have drank 5. And you're like, yeah, you drank 5. And so, you got to have that kind of, you got to calm the storm down a bit and make sure, they actually leave paying their bill. You get people that come in wanting to know technical stuff. So that's like Andy's kind of thing. You get people coming in wanting to complain about their day or whatever. I'll sit and listen, so it's like, there's a balance. Like, you got to kind of read the customers and see which one of us fits best with them. And a lot of times people want to sit down and have a beer with you or want to cheers you all the time. That's kind of tough. And then we just worked a whole day in the brewery, and now we got to work a whole night in the bar. So, our free time gets a bit low. And as this thing gets better, we can hire more staff, kind of relieve ourselves from the taproom side of things, because at the end of the day, we like it, but it is the most draining part. Like, we can work a whole brew day, but you get burnt out working the bar.
And I mean, so in the long run, is it really about getting more? I guess the other thing as well is, I know you speak Khmer, right? Yeah. And I mean, are you able to kind of, I guess it would be helpful having more, if you've got, Khmer experts in your customer service team who are able to kind of talk about the beer rather than you having to do that. Because I imagine that's quite a challenge. I mean, are you able to sit down and talk with the Khmer customer about the beer?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can do that, but at the moment, that's not really necessary in terms of like a sales team, because my brother-in-law, who basically, when we were living in the brewery years ago, he grew up in the brewery as well, because we take care of him. And so he grew up in the brewery. When he was old enough to drink, he started working in the brewery. So, he's been with us for years. So he knows, he's tasted, we've taught him how to taste. He's watched us make many batches. So he is kind of like, if we have staff that don't drink and it's really difficult, they don't want to try it. The girls don't want to, get drunk, and they don't really take the time to try it again and again. But David, my brother-in-law, he definitely gets the beer. He can go out and explain it. He can tell them which is this, which is that. He used to work at Embargo as well.
It's a small community here.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I saw your guys' brewery that he grew up in, and that was awesome. It was, back to what we were talking about before. Yeah. I was lucky enough to see the Genesis brewery that you guys are building up.
Long.
What other I was meaning on asking you guys as well is, obviously once things enter normality again, before COVID hit, you guys were starting to get some beer into Vietnam, and I know you guys had a collaboration with Pasteur Street Brewing Company. You guys were doing some beer. I mean, is that because you guys are all about perseverance, right? You've spent years and years and years building this up. You've got a lot more patience than a lot of people in the beer business.
Patience.
What's yeah? Well, what's? I mean, are you guys setting your sights on dominating the Cambodian market? Is that your focus now, is to break into other cities? Is it regional expansion?
Yeah, I wouldn't say domination, but we definitely want to expand.
We want to expand the whole market. So not just us, but every.
Yeah. We want everybody to come up with us.
But I mean, again, fair point. No, and I know you guys are very communally focused, right? Again, talking about people like Embargo and Box Office and the other brewers in the market and distillers in the market. But I mean, is your guys' focus going to be expanding? As I know you've got it into other cities in Cambodia, like you've got it into Siem Reap and Kampot. Is that something you double down on? Like, do you see the growth of craft beer nationally in Cambodia?
Sure. Yeah.
Siem Reap now, because Siem Reap was 100% because of Angkor Wat tourism, right? So now the tourism is gone, Angkor Wat or Siem Reap is a ghost town. So we have not had anybody order beer up there for a very long time. Kampot, however, and that's 5 hours away from Phnom Penh, but Kampot is 2 hours away from Phnom Penh. So the people from Phnom Penh will go down to Kampot easily in a 2-hour little jaunt. And also the local scene in Kampot, the locals down there, they're drinking a lot of craft beer. We just got, people starting to get draft down there. A lot of the restaurants and stuff, they're buying a decent amount of bottles. Also, shout out to Stumble Inn and Monkey Republic. They buy a lot of beer. Yeah. Oh yeah, craft. Yeah, I got it right there. Craft beer, Kampot Craft Beer Festival.
But I mean, and that no, that's cool, and it's cool to hear that it's domestically growing. And I guess once that is one positive thing about Cambodia, right? I mean, you guys, without going too far into COVID, I mean, a lot of people might not realize listening, Cambodia is actually one of the furthest ahead countries on vaccination. So hopefully, that's able to restart in the next 6 to 12 months. Oh no, I was just saying it's pretty cool. One positive thing about where you guys are is from a tourism perspective. You mentioned Siem Reap being a ghost town. I mean, I do see Cambodia is going to be one of the leading countries in Southeast Asia from a vaccination perspective, right? So it means that hopefully tourism starts again.
Drugs ain't doing well.
Me and him have been vaccinated for 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
they just gave it to us for free. Good. Like they put a station in every neighborhood, and then you just walk up and give them your paperwork and stuff, and then you vaccine.
But going back one, talking about the expanding into regions around. Obviously, before COVID and everything hit, we were talking to expand into Thailand and Vietnam. Vietnam, we had already organised everything, and we're about 2 weeks away from doing the first batches there for distribution when the borders closed. So that shut all that off.
He got a 3-month visa to go back and forth to do this, and it was denied after he had already had it accepted.
I don't know.
But yeah, it's such a pain in the ass about that stuff, and I think, but in the long run, do you think in the medium term, let's say the next 6 to 12 months, that is an ambition of you guys is to start doing more beer in Thailand, getting more beer into Vietnam?
In the next 3 to 6 months, I don't expect Thailand anything to happen there. Maybe Vietnam, but I think that's probably still a bit short.
We've figured out, before that sending beer to Vietnam is a bit wonky. So I think that just going over there and brewing it is the best option.
That was the original plan. Brew over there for distribution. Thailand, though, we're not expecting much from Thailand in the near future.
I mean, that's initially why we bought this 15 hectare per batch brew system, is to do that. And then right after we bought it, obviously Thailand crunched down on the laws on the craft beer. So our brew system, due to the current situation, has been sitting idle for a while. So we still brew on the small one.
When do you think you'll be able to upgrade to the larger one once things settle down a bit, COVID-wise?
There's no more restrictions.
Yeah, and pretty much waiting on the laws. I mean, we can do it. It's just without legality, there's no real point in making that step.
Exactly, and as well, like trying to make sure that the rent is paid. We still have to upgrade the compressor for the new brew system. We need a new mill. There's a couple things we need, and for us to spend the money on that at the moment while things are so slow just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it's still a bit of a struggle month to month. I mean, things aren't going fantastic,
but we're not dying. So.
But I mean, credit to you guys for the fact that you've survived, right? And I guess cheers to that. The fact that you guys have been able to get through a really challenging period. You better refill. But Andy, cheers. Cheers. By the way, cheers to everyone who's listening. We've had a great crowd today. We've had a lot of people listening and a lot of comments. Shout out to Chris, Paul, Fred, Charles, John, Jeevan, Kimmo. Kimmo was asking for subtitles, Andy, for your contributions.
He asked me for that too. Tell the count back.
Hey, but back to the beers, because obviously you're the kind of the brewing mind in the company. I mean, what have you got planned in the next few months? Have you got anything exciting? Because I know that you recently made, was it a tequila beer or a margarita beer?
Margarita Gossa. Actually, that's what I was just drinking before. It's gone.
Citra.
Cheers. But yeah, so what have you got in the pipeline in the next few months in terms of styles?
There's some stuff. I mean, we've been doing the Gossas. That's actually Noisy Chili herself jumping off the thing. Come on. Noisy Chili herself causing chaos. Can you hear that?
So that's because your tap room is actually named after the cat, right?
Yeah, this is Noisy Chili here.
So that's Noisy Chili, and so the tap room is named after the cat completely, right?
Yeah.
The logo is.
So she's the mascot.
She's the matriarch.
And does she live in the tap room?
Yeah. We're at the brewery now.
But yeah, in terms of stuff upcoming, I mean, we're going to bring back a stout. Before we did a coffee stout, we will probably move into more of a chocolate milk stout style thing. But apart from that, kind of just, I don't know. I've been sort of, during our downtime, been concentrating on upgrading infrastructure and stuff. But yeah, the next thing will be doing a new chocolate stout. What else have we got online? I can't tell. There's a few. I'm going to do a Pacifico, the new, basically an Australian session pale ale.
Nice. Hey, speaking of beer, I mean, what's it like? What is it like getting hops and malt right now? Is it easy to? I mean, is it easy to get? Are you guys having a hard time getting supplies or not?
We can still get supplies.
We can, yeah. It's a little bit more convoluted than usual, but we can.
Shipping is up.
Stuff. So yeah, it's expensive.
The money sending fees are up.
But it's not a showstopper. So.
Oh yeah, one thing I was going to mention before is before we used to sell mostly wholesale, but now that we have this nice garden area, we're not out there right now because it was raining. It was quite noisy, but we've switched to when the pandemic started. We had I think maybe 8 restaurants and bars that were taking bottles and maybe 12 draft customers. And then when the pandemic started, pretty much all the bottle customers except for 2 or 3 and all the draft customers except for 2 stopped ordering. So when we moved into this place, we went, I don't know, what would you say, because we only had a few wholesale customers and most of it was in-house. So we went from mostly wholesale to a lot more in-house sales. So it kind of
5% wholesale to 30-40% wholesale.
Yeah, so now it's changed from what it was before. I had forgot that we were talking about something about that earlier.
Yeah, we've definitely with the whole COVID situation, a lot of bars have closed and we've managed to open, which has helped our retail sales.
And also during this thing, being an outdoor venue, with big fans oscillating around and stuff, a lot more people feel comfortable. We can space the tables out. We've got massive, big, long wooden tables that we can social distance people and still be with your group. And so that kind of helped us chug along during all of these limited occupancy restrictions and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting about the change in terms of your B2B customer base, right, and switching from wholesale to kind of more direct. And I'm sure that'll only grow over time, right, once restrictions lift. One of the things, by the way, everyone listening, you're welcome to ask questions in the chat. We've actually gotten a lot of comments today, which has been pretty cool. Lots and lots of comments.
Can we
actually,
Oh, we can. We didn't even have the channel.
yeah, we can actually. Patrick from Fuzzy asked if there was a new annual Blunder collab coming along anytime soon.
Hey, we're talking about that, Patrick. Why didn't we just talk the other? Although the stuff we talked about, Patrick, that can't be a blunder. It's going to be bigger than that. So yes, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, it's a secret at the moment. We'll talk to you later.
We got another question from Chris Schulha, who's a kind of like one of the kind of community leaders of the home brewing scene in Saigon. He was just asking specifically about, he'd asked about the quality of supplies, which is what I kind of was asking before, but he was also asking about the yeast quality and what the yeast situation is like over there right now.
You mean the yeast that we buy for like our ale yeast and stuff?
Yeah,
we use fermenters.
We just buy fermenters. It's fine.
No issue with quality.
And is that coming from Vietnam?
Yeah, that's coming through Titan. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's cool.
We haven't had issues with yeast quality now. Although the last fermenters workshop I went to, they told me you don't have to oxygenate. Come on, fermenters, you do. It makes a difference.
Fermenters is one of our sponsors, so I'm in full support of them.
I was joking about that.
No, it's all good. But no, it's awesome.
There's no problems with quality of this.
We've never had an issue.
Fine. Yeah.
No, that's cool. No, and it's look. I mean, I'm really happy that you guys are able to get supplies because obviously it's been, you guys have been so DIY for so long, and now you've been able to kind of scale up and build. I mean, going back to what we were talking about at the start of the conversation, right? The fact that you guys had that, you had that mission, that goal in mind about building a brewery. I mean, what is your guys' long-term dream? Is it? I mean, I'm not talking about 6 months, 1 year. I mean, are you guys, do you want to really? Do you want to keep, stay as a kind of like a medium-sized brewery? Do you want to scale up and kind of? I know you don't want to dominate and destroy the market, but where do you guys think you're going to be in the next 2-3 years?
For me, I don't want to be a massive macro brewery. I mean, I obviously want to be bigger than we are now, but I don't want to be a huge macro brewery. Let's say something small, like 100 million liters.
I don't know. I see myself, I don't know. I just want this thing to be kind of like a flagship brewery for the country. I mean, the size doesn't matter as long as things are going well for everybody involved, I guess. I'm easy on the size that we grow to.
But obviously we have to keep the quality and the reputation.
Quality first.
A slow growth is better than a quick growth and then dying because the quality goes off a cliff.
So one thing we do is, even though it's a bit more expensive to make the beers, especially like our IPA, super hop heavy and stuff like that, we still do it. Still the same price as our other beers. So, that one's way more expensive to make. Can't be cutting corners. Just make sure that.
Well, Cameron doesn't like that one.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
No, and look, credit to you guys for maintaining that quality standard. It's super cool, and it's something I'm really stoked that you guys have been able to do that over the years. And look, it's personally been awesome seeing you guys grow so much since we first met 5 years ago. It's
The
really,
second
really
brew. The first. The first brew festival. No.
Yeah, it was at an
Himawari.
animal fundraiser at Himawari.
It was the first ever Cambodia craft beer festival, and you were there for a visa run, and you Googled it, and you found it. You found out you met us, and then afterwards we went back to some dodgy beer garden. We went back to the brewery, drank a bunch of wit beer, and then went to some dodgy beer garden. You ate all the food yourself.
Yeah, and I was very unwell after eating ants. That's a memory I have.
I don't think it was the ants.
Yeah. It may have been I think it was the ants.
But how did you feel the next day?
Yeah, not great. I'm sure it wasn't. Well, I know it wasn't your guys' beer. It wasn't your guys' beer. Hey, but look, guys. On that note, hey, look, it's been so cool catching up today. You know, I like many of us listening, and I know there's a few of us. You know, shout out to people like Anand, and there's a few people in the crowd who I know really want to get back to Cambodia and have a beer with you guys.
He had a good session.
Yeah, no, we all want to get back to embargo and box office, and we're all really excited about that. But look, we've had a great turnout today. This has been one of our top live audiences actually of any of all the ABN talks we've done. So credit to you guys. We've had about 20 plus people watching. We've got about 17 watching now. We've had about 20 plus people watching the whole time. So and that's people dropping off and coming in. So credit to you guys for being able to build that reputation up as making great beer, and I'm sure a lot of that audience is rooting for you. There's a lot of people throwing really nice comments into the chat about you making some of the best beer. Paul Glue mentioned that without a doubt the most innovative and flavor positive brewers in Phnom Penh. These guys know what they're doing and they do it exceptionally well. So so we've got some big fans in the audience, but look, guys, I just wanted to say thank you again for joining today. It's been awesome having you on ABN Talks. And for everyone who's listening, you can reach out to Riel. You can find them on Facebook. If you type in Riel Brewing, it's spelled R-I-E-L. You can find Riel Brewing and Distilling. You can connect with these guys, and I would really, really strongly encourage you to try their beer and drop by their tap house when you're next in Phnom Penh once borders reopen and things become a little more sane. So, guys, thank you again, and thanks everyone for listening. It's been a pleasure, and otherwise, we will be signing off for ABN Talks this week.
Cheers, Evans.
Later, brother.